Begin. Ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. The people of Hawaii received this message in the January of 2018. That time it was an accident. The next time it could be real. Because of this, I proudly affirm the resolution resolves. States ought to eliminate their nuclear arsenals. I value morality because ought implies a moral obligation. Thus, the very criterion must be maximizing well-being. There are two main reasons for this. One, everyone does not like painful, emotionally harmful experiences, so naturally try to replace these things with good things. Two, things like death and oppression are intuitively bad and affect everyone, so we should do everything we can do to prevent them. Thus, you should vote for whoever helps the most amount of people. By guaranteeing that nuclear war will never happen, this is the affirmative. My first argument is that tensions between foreign countries make nuclear war inevitable. A. Tensions between the US and North Korea are rising. North Korea is both escalating and attempting to test missiles under the radar. Andrew Reuter's PhD reports in 2019. North Korea fired 2 short-range missiles on Thursday. The US seized a North Korean cargo ship as tensions mounted. North Korea has pulled back from engagement with Washington since the summit fell apart. North Korea has returned to escalation tactics. They will keep escalating by using missiles that will not cause the US to react right away. Kim's goal is to show America and its allies that they are not willing to compromise. New launches only worsen tensions. B. North Korea is a threat to the whole world if it continues on its path of nuclear development, risking global nuclear war. David Axe, professor and researcher at National Interest, finds in 2019. North Korea is building up a large stockpile with multiple options to employ nuclear weapons. The DPRK could explode one or more as a warning while reserving 20 to 60 weapons to attack military targets. This would leave 30 to 40 weapons to attack South Korea, Japan, China, Russia, and the US. If piloting struck Vietnam, 400,000 people would instantly die. C. Alongside North Korea, tensions between India and Pakistan are rising and the chances of a nuclear war happening are rising as well. Pakistan is refusing to sign legislation that stops them from using their nuclear arsenal. Andy Walker, expert analysis in the field of escalation and war, reports in 2019. Modi warned of a crushing response and launched airstrikes on targets in the Pakistan-controlled Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Both sides were exchanging artillery fire and the conflict quickly escalated. India will use its nuclear weapons in response to a nuclear attack. Pakistan has so far refused to issue any clear doctrine governing its own use of nuclear weapons. D. An India-Pakistani nuclear war leads to immeasurable death, starvation, and possibly extinction. Tina Nelson, director of the Global Climate Change Initiative, reports in 2020. If Hiroshima-sized nuclear bombs were dropped on cities in India and Pakistan, 20 million would die instantly. Firestorms would erupt, releasing massive amounts of smoke. This would cause a 10% reduction in global precipitation and a sudden drop in temperature. Crops would suffer and growing seasons would become shorter. The climate would be impacted for at least a decade. 1 billion people worldwide would die and 2 billion people would be at risk of starvation. In summary, global temperatures between countries are high now. North Korea, India, and Pakistan are all building up their nuclear stockpiles, just to name a few. These tensions have a high possibility of going nuclear, which threatens the lives of billions of people. The only way to stop these consequences is to eliminate all nuclear weapons. My second argument is nuclear terrorism. Terrorists are seeking nuclear weapons. Nasser and Admin 1219. Terrorists are seeking nuclear weapons. Terrorist groups have been successful in attacking military posts. Pakistan's nukes may fall into the hands of terrorist groups, and nukes will become harder to defend. Successful terrorist attacks confirmed. Gregory 11. Safety and security of nuclear materials in Pakistan may be compromised. An assault on nuclear storage facilities is no longer an implausible event. The successful location and penetration of a site by terrorists would transform the US-Pakistani relationship and international anxiety about the security of Pakistan's nuclear weapons. As the number of Pakistan's nuclear weapons continues to rise, the odds that weapon security will be compromised continues to rise as well. And this is a serious threat to the US and allies. Captain 16. Nuclear terrorism poses a serious threat to the US and its allies. Programs securing these materials have steadily declined in attention and funding. Even a single terrorist explosion will cause a full nuclear war. Bletchman writes in 2014, a single nuclear weapon exploded by a terrorist will cause a nuclear war in retaliation. All major powers are vulnerable to this danger. Nuclear war would be devastating. Getting rid of nuclear weapons is key to stop this. Countries are in agreement. Bletchman writes, Pakistan, Libya, Syria, and Burma have all raised great concerns given the vulnerability to terrorist bombings. Relying on diplomacy no longer seems responsible. Many governments, including those of nuclear weapon states, support an agreement that would eliminate all nuclear weapons from all nations. The danger of a terrorist getting a nuclear bomb from an unstable state like Pakistan is becoming more likely every day. When this happens, the explosion will not only kill millions initially, but also lead to a full nuclear war threatening all of humanity. And finally, why all this matters. Nuclear war from any source leads to the extinction of all species on Earth. Star 15. Following detonation, mass fires would release millions of tons of soot. The smoke would engulf the Earth. Nuclear winter would cause global surface temperatures to become colder than the Ice Age. Humans and animals starve to death. Nuclear winter could cause human extinction. In summary, nuclear war is becoming more likely every single day. On our current path, whether it has become because of conflicts between countries or terrorist bombings, nuclear war is inevitable and will kill all of humanity. The only way to guarantee that this will never happen is to eliminate all nuclear weapons. For these reasons, I urge you to affirm the resolution.
Okay. Are you ready for CX?
1 second, I need to take a while. I hope that my voice doesn't sound this bad tomorrow during the tournament. Alright, begin on record.
You're gonna just face through.
Like, it's that way. You can use the stand since you have a computer. Alright, begin on record.
Okay. On to nuclear conflict. How do you guarantee that conflict will stop once we have eliminated nuclear arsenals?
Would you please repeat the question?
Do you guarantee that conflict will stop once you eliminate nuclear arsenals?
No, I do not guarantee any such thing. In fact, it's very likely that this conflict will escalate into war, which is why we need to eliminate nuclear weapons.
That's fine. How come we've never seen a nuclear conflict before?
Simply because countries are too scared to use them until now.
Okay, that's good.
Escalation.
Also, you talk about how countries like North Korea are gonna eliminate nukes when we do the app, correct?
Would you please repeat the question?
Yeah, so you talk about countries like North Korea and how they're gonna eliminate nuclear weapons to ensure the world is more peaceful, correct?
Correct.
What do you guarantee?
Not necessarily. What
That's-
I'm saying is that these countries, whether or not we can actually convince them to, are obligated to eliminate their nuclear weapons.
Okay.
This is regardless of whether or
That's
not
good.
they will actually agree to.
How do you
so.
actually guarantee that countries will follow the plan though?
As I just said, I'm not arguing that they are going to follow it or anything.
So you're saying that we can pass the policy of eliminating nuclear arsenals,
I'm
but
not
we
passing
can't
a
guarantee.
policy.
But you can guarantee that countries like North Korea will follow the plan of eliminating nuclear arsenals?
I'm not passing a policy. I'm arguing that these countries are obligated to eliminate their nuclear arsenals. This is not any sort of implementation. As long as countries can eliminate their nuclear arsenals, which every country with nuclear weapons are capable of doing, I'm saying that they are obligated to eliminate them.
Okay. On to your contention to nuclear terrorism. When was the previous terrorist attack on nuclear facilities?
There have been several in Pakistan, as I mentioned.
When was the last date?
Do you want me to show you my cards?
Can you just give an exact date and year of which these attacks actually happened?
I do not know them off the top of my head.
Okay, that is
but
fine.
I can search through my evidence for it if you want.
And how exactly do you decrease the chances of nuclear terrorism? Is it just by eliminating nukes will guarantee that countries or terrorist groups won't have the ability to actually take these nuclear weapons from countries?
What we do is, one, we make it a lot harder for terrorists to get nuclear weapons, but more importantly, we make sure that there can't be nuclear war as a result of nuclear terrorism. This is more important than eliminating any single terrorist threat. So even if you argue somehow that terrorists can still build nukes, what the affirmative does is we prevent full-out nuclear war, which is.
So you're saying we would nuke a nuclear terrorism, a group of terrorists that have nuclear weapons?
I'm not saying that we would nuke terrorists. I'm saying.
Then
that
what are you trying to solve then? If you say you're solving for nuclear war,
I'm not. We wouldn't nuke the terrorists. We would nuke everybody.
but didn't you just say that the reason we're passing the act
No.
is? What did you say then?
What I'm saying is that if terrorists get hold of that nuclear bomb, they would detonate it, and by that, a nuclear explosion would cause full nuclear war. You can look to my Bletchman card on this.
So you're saying the
That
nuclear?
was the end of CS.
Okay, that's fine.
Do you want to begin prep time?
I'll start with. I don't need prep time. So
Darren.
are you ready?
1 second.
Or actually, I'll use 30 seconds of prep.
Alright then, begin now.
I'll continue prep.
Let you time it then.
Okay, I used 50 seconds. So the order of the speeches is going to be stating my own case and then responding to my opponent's in his last speech. So Lucas, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Starting now. I negate resolve states ought to eliminate their nuclear arsenals. I value morality and maximizing well-being, which I agree with my opponent, and you should vote on who better fulfills the framework of maximizing well-being and morality. On to my first contention of deterrence. A world without nuclear deterrence allows for countries to take risks without the fear of being nuked. Zimmerman from the Senate of Foreign Relations writes in 2017 that deterring nuclear war isn't the only use of nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons also deter conventional war. Powers have not come into direct conflict after the invention of nuclear weapons. Realization that a conflict could escalate to nuclear catastrophe has contributed to nations standing down. Existence of nuclear weapons made adversaries think carefully about the desirability of going to war at all. Nuclear deterrent has limited war aims to those short of destruction. Conventional weapons have never been enough to deter conventional war. 2 world wars have showed us this. A world without nuclear weapons would be less stable for all of us. And the threat of nuclear war is what stops conflict from happening. Empirics prove. Robert Spalding writes from the Council of Foreign Relations in 2013 that nuclear forces exist to keep a threshold on the level of violence, which is especially important when disagreements between powers move beyond dialogue. Direct conflict between nuclear powers has always de-escalated back to dialogue because the threat of a nuclear holocaust is too menacing. Nuclear weapons are instruments of peace. Since August 9th, 1945, 7 to 10 million people have died from conflict. Before nuclear weapons, wars alone led to deaths of 70 to 100 million from the Second and First World War. A perceived march towards complete disarmament weakens the very thing that ensures a peaceful future. Peace starts with the realization that peace can be secured only through strength. Nuclear weapons represent that strength. And contention 2 is how eliminating nukes actually leads to nuclear terrorism. Plackett 19 writes that once a weapon has been taken apart, we're left with substantial quantities of plutonium. It is just stuck in storage facilities. And disarmed materials are vulnerable to being stolen by terrorist organizations. NTI writes that increasingly well-funded terrorist organizations which know how to build a bomb have declared their intent to seek materials for weapons of mass destruction. And terrorists know how to build a bomb. All they need are the materials which become vulnerable after the affirmative. Ferguson 16 writes that terrorist groups can build devastating nuclear weapons. Preventing nuclear terrorism is connected to stopping the spread of materials. By reducing nuclear materials, terrorists will have fewer places to buy or steal critical components of nuclear terrorism. And the affirmative also kills defense against nuclear terrorism and ensures nuclear materials go into the black market. CKF19 writes that there's a significant illegal market in nuclear materials, more than 100 smuggling incidents since 1993. Technology is no longer a mystery. It seems inevitable, but the best way to prevent attacks is to ensure weapons stay in the hands of countries and not radical groups. Deterrence loses power when wielded by organizations without borders. Make sure weapons are in the hands of states. And terrorists will use these nukes. Nothing deters them. Causes inevitable nuclear terrorism with billions dead. Mervold writes in 2014 that technology can provide people with weapons more destructive than those held by any state. A single individual could kill billions. The danger arises from stateless groups who are bent on terrorism who will gain access to nuclear weapons. The ultimate response to nuclear terrorism is a nuclear counterattack. However, terrorists often hope to provoke reprisal attacks on their own people. Aftermath of 9/11 is a case on point. Terrorists can mount assaults that no state would ever attempt, and countries wouldn't retaliate with a nuclear strike. Now on to the affirmative case. My opponent's first contention is how tensions between countries have been rising ever since nuclear arsenals haven't come into play. And he talks about specifically North Korea and India and Pakistan. First, I'll talk about North Korea. So he said himself that nuclear war has not come because countries are fearful of the repercussions that arise from things like extinction that come from nuclear winter. And that just goes to show you that countries aren't willing to go to war because of the fact they don't want to face extinction and nuclear winter. And second of all, if you don't believe that, North Korea is greatly been stabilizing in their tensions. The Schellenberger 19 outlines that negotiations between the United States and North Korea have greatly destabilized due to foreign negotiations which have proved to work, and that prove that Kim Jong-un isn't a threat like he used to be. Now on to his second point of India and Pakistan. He talks about how India and Pakistan are willing to go to war, but first of all, this has been the case for the past 70 years. And we haven't yet seen a nuclear war between them. And this is clearly outlined in the Kargil War, which you should prefer because it's real-life examples of what has happened in the past. It was a war 20 years ago when both countries possessed nuclear arsenals. They both refused to go to war because they knew the repercussions, especially when they are so close geographically. And the Ganguly 3-5 card clearly outlines how Indian policy forbids them from actually striking Pakistan first, and how it also states that Pakistan does not go to war themselves. And also, we've already given you a reason why they don't go to war is because of the fact they don't want to face these these terrible repercussions of nuclear winter, which my opponent says cause extinction. So that proves these foreign countries are unwilling to go to war because they know the repercussions and they're not going to actually go to war, which proves that my opponent doesn't actually have an impact from these rising tensions because we've proved that countries are stabilizing in tensions. On to the second contention of nuclear terrorism, he has refused to give a previous example of a terrorist attack on a nuclear facility, which proves that security, which has been greatly upped in the last 3 years, has worked. His own Nasir and Amin 1219 card clearly outlines how nuclear terrorism has greatly decreased because of security that has been upped on facilities, specifically in Pakistan. Also, he talks about how Pakistan is willing to give terrorists in Pakistan are going to get nuclear materials, but the Hero 4-4 card clearly outlines how Pakistan has had a crackdown on nuclear groups, meaning that they're unwilling to let nuclear terrorism groups even into their country, and they're actively trying to fight them from getting these terrible weapons.
Okay. Right.
Are you gonna stand here?
Yeah, I'll just stand right here. Right. Alright, so everyone is ready?
Yeah.
Alright, begin time. Your first contention is deterrence, right?
Correct.
And would you please explain this argument?
Yeah, so basically nuclear deterrence is based on the fact that countries know the terrible impacts that arise when they nuke each other, and they don't even want to go to war because of the fact that conventional wars are actively being deterred.
Does this prevent nuclear war 100% of the time?
Yeah.
Can you
We-
prove there's absolutely no risk of nuclear war?
Yeah, so we obviously can't prove there's no risk, but we can look at
Thank you.
historical examples
Alright.
of the Cold War
So
and
your
Korean
second
War.
contention brings up nuclear terrorism, correct?
Correct.
And would you please explain this?
Yeah, so basically, we tell you that countries like Pakistan are already cracking down on terrorist groups at the moment, but we
I
tell
don't believe that was your contention. Could you please explain?
Yeah, I was getting to that. So basically, this evidence, this Placket 19 evidence outlines how when we disarm a nuclear bomb, it is the waste materials are gone into
Alright,
a
wait,
storage
so
facility.
going back to that, you say that when you disarm, you're left with plutonium, correct?
Correct.
And then you say that terrorists could build uranium bombs, correct?
Correct.
Are you aware of the differences between plutonium and uranium bombs?
Well, yeah, plutonium is actively used in
You're
making a
aware that
nuclear
plutonium
bomb.
is far harder to build bombs with than uranium.
Yeah, but we tell you that terrorists right now
and that
know how to
isn't
build a
just left
bomb.
around like plutonium is because of that risk.
Can you repeat your question?
Continuing on, back to your first contention, you bring up that nuclear weapons stop violence, correct?
Correct.
Did nuclear weapons stop the Vietnam War?
Yeah, so basically we tell you
They
that
did.
let me answer the question, please. We tell you that those countries like United States weren't gonna nuke.
That was not the question. Did it stop the Vietnam War?
Well, the Vietnam War wasn't between two nuclear states. It was a civil war between
Thank you. Did it stop
North
the
and
Korean
South.
War?
Also, we tell you that Korean War was also a civil war between two.
Has it stopped the current conflict between India and Pakistan?
Yeah, so basically we outline how nuclear deterrence has greatly decreased conflict and
Did it
also
stop the modern day war between the US and Iran?
I think I'm explaining to you why, how tensions have already de-escalated, and the Spalding evidence outlines how only 7 to 10 million people have died since 70 years, while 70 to 100 million died in the two world wars alone. Yes, so basically we tell you that countries are unwilling to go to war because they know these terrible impacts, and they don't.
prove this is because of deterrence.
Yeah, so we look at historical examples like the Cold War, which proves that countries aren't even willing to. Two major countries
Alright,
like
thank you.
USSR
So
and
on to my case, on my second contention, you say that, on my second contention, what was your argument against this?
yeah. So onto your second contention, we tell you that countries like Pakistan have already cracked down on terrorist
You're
groups.
aware that terrorists have infiltrated the Pakistan military, correct?
Yeah, so
And
you
that
refuse to
Pakistan
give an
uses
example of the
terrorists.
last previous time terrorists had actually successfully infiltrated countries like Pakistan, and we tell you that security is being greatly ramped up.
Alright. Okay, well. Sorry, begin prep. Alright, stop prep. You step 1 minute and 16 seconds. Okay. Alright. So, the order is first going to be the affirmative case, and then I'll go over to the negative case, and then I'll explain why you should vote for the affirmative. Non-existent judge ready, opponent ready?
Mhm.
Alright. Begin time. My first contention says that foreign tensions between countries are higher than ever and are currently escalating. If left unchecked, they will lead to nuclear war, which leads to the extinction of humanity. On the line by line, my opponent has two attacks on this. One on North Korea, he says that countries won't go to war because they don't want extinction. The whole idea of deterrence against nuclear war relies on the idea that one, leaders are rational and they won't nuke each other in times of stress, which is completely wrong. We have seen leaders almost come to nuking each other before. We've had instances where the only thing preventing nuclear war was the decision of one person with only partial information, not knowing what the correct decision was. There's nothing preventing leaders from making a mistake and causing nuclear war. Second, he says that the nuclear war between India and Pakistan hasn't happened yet. New things can happen. Just because something hasn't happened in the past does not mean it can't happen in the future. My second contention says that if terrorists are able to get a hold of a nuke, they will detonate that nuke, and which will lead to full nuclear war across the world, which leads to extinction. On the line by line, my opponent says, one, I have no example of this, of terrorists attacking military facilities. In Admin 1219, I bring up how terrorists have breached military bases in Pakistan. My opponent says that my card brings up how Pakistan's having a crackdown on terrorist groups. No, it does not. The card says nothing of this sort. My opponent says that Pakistan had a crackdown on nukes separately from that. Just on this whole argument, one, Pakistan has terrorists in its military, and two, it uses terrorist groups to help itself in war. Pakistan is not cracking down on terrorist groups. It has been completely infiltrated by terrorists and is at high risk of having nuclear weapons stolen from them. This means that there is a high risk that terrorists are going to get a nuke and cause extinction unless we can prevent this. On to my opponent's case. One is that on all of this, nuclear war leading to extinction outweighs everything. This means that there's even a chance that nuclear war can happen in the future, then that chance is going to eventually lead to nuclear war, and nuclear war completely outweighs all other impacts. Meaning that even if my opponent wins, all their contentions are true, you're still going to affirm to stop nuclear war. Continuing on my opponent's first contention about deterrence. One is there's no way to prove that nuclear deterrence has worked. You can't just look to a number and say something caused it. Correlation does not equal causation. Two is that nuclear states are actually more likely to attack non-nuclear states, as shown by the US attacking Vietnam, Korea, and Iran. Second, my opponent says that nuclear weapons stop violence. Nuclear weapons do not stop violence in any regard. They did not stop the Vietnam War, the Korean War, the current modern-day Iran War, or conflicts between India and Pakistan. There's no such thing as nuclear weapons deterring violence. On my opponent's second contention about nuclear terrorism, here's the thing. Nuclear terrorism is a big threat. Both my opponent and I agree on this. In the affirmative, we prevent nuclear terrorism from causing full nuclear war, which means that the affirmative prevents the most death, which is good under util. Second, my opponent says that terrorists could build a bomb if we rearmed. Here's the thing. His evidence talks about how we would just stick plutonium into facilities and then terrorists could build bombs. Here's the thing. That terrorists could build bombs out of uranium. Plutonium, they cannot build bombs out of it. It's much harder to create a bomb, meaning that they would not be able to do so. Second of all, on their final argument about terrorists using nuclear weapons, full nuclear war is worse than just a single detonation. In summary, you're going to affirm to stop full nuclear war from leading to the extinction of the human race.
Okay, I'll use the rest of 310 starting now.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
Okay.
Yes. I got that before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So are you ready?
Yes.
So the order is going to be framework, and then extending my case, and then responding to his case. So are you ready?
Yes.
Starting now. So judge, me and my opponent have both agreed on the framework of morality and maximizing well-being. You should vote for whoever best maximizes well-being and achieves morality the best. I will clearly show you why the negative wins that debate by a mile. On to my first contention of deterrence. The reason we haven't seen bigger conventional conflict is because of nuclear deterrence. Without nuclear arsenals, countries take more risk, and that ensures that more conventional wars will break out. We have 70 years of history on our side. There's never been a nuclear war between two great powers and between any country. And we also have conventional numbers on our side. After the invention of nuclear weapons, we have only seen the deaths of 7 million people in armed conflict. In 2 world wars alone, without the presence of nuclear weapons, we have seen 70 to 100 million people dead in 2 wars alone. That is enough to empirically prove why deterrence is true and why it is not a false theory why my opponents claim. We have the empirics to prove it while he has none. His only response is correlation, not causation, but we give you direct evidence which says that countries are unwilling to go to war when they know the terrible impacts of nuclear war that arises from launching a nuke at each other. This is enough to prove that nuclear deterrence is a true theory. Now on to my second contention of nuclear terrorism. When we eliminate nuclear arsenals, we will put them in storage facilities. The Placket 19 evidence clearly outlines this. This means that terrorists will be more easily able to steal these nuclear materials because they are guarded at a much lower level when put into storage facilities. That ensures to increase the chance of the risk of nuclear terrorism, which my opponent claims to solve. This just proves that the affirmative is not only not solving for nuclear terrorism, but just increasing the chances of it happening in the world. This proves that you shouldn't vote for the affirmative on that contention because we have proofs that they negatively affect the world and minimize well-being by trying to eliminate nuclear arsenals because they increase nuclear terrorism. And his only response to this is that nuclear terrorists can build plutonium bombs, but that is completely false and backed up by no evidence. The Mervold and NTI evidence clearly outline how terrorists can build a weapon more destructive than any other nation state, and that is specifically talking about nuclear weapons. This proves that we have won our case and that we should move on to the affirmative case. So now on to his first contention of nuclear tensions rising. He says that tensions are higher than ever and irrational leaders are the reason why. But first of all, Kim Jong-un is not an irrational leader anymore because negotiations between North Korea and the United States of America has proceeded well, and we have reduced any chance of nuclear war actually happening due to negotiations which have completely stabilized all tensions and proved there is no risk of a nuclear war arising from North Korea. Now on to his second point of India and Pakistan. He says that we shouldn't look at historical examples and that India-Pakistan war is likely, but just look at conventional war and how it's happening at a minimized rate than it used to happen 50 years ago when nuclear weapons didn't exist. And this proves that not only has conventional war been mitigated by a large amount, we also prove that nuclear war is unlikely to happen. And his only response is saying that new things are likely to happen, specifically talking about India and Pakistan war, but we clearly outline how those countries have both stated they're unwilling to go to war, and we can just look at historical examples when a war has actually broken out, how nuclear weapons have not come into play ever between two nuclear weapon states. And now on to his final contention of nuclear terrorism. He states in his card how the Amin 19 brings up several examples of groups that have penetrated Pakistan, but he could give no example of a recent time when terrorists have successfully penetrated into nuclear facilities. And this just proves that terrorism has been mitigated due to the fact that security has been greatly up, and that is directly outlined in his own card of Amin 1219, which proves that his own card says that nuclear terrorism is unlikely due to increased security. And if you don't believe that, he talks about terrorism and how terrorist groups are in Pakistan's military and Pakistan supports terrorists. But this is completely false and outdated. This evidence was taken 3 years ago, but my evidence, which clearly states how the world has changed in Pakistan and how Pakistan has had a major crackdown on terrorist groups, proves that terrorism in Pakistan's nuclear arsenal is unlikely due to Pakistan not supporting terrorists anymore and is actively trying to crack down on them, proving that nuclear terrorism is so unlikely in the affirmative. But we just turned the entire contention in nuclear terrorism by saying they increase the chances. So reasons why you vote negative, it's clear his only weighing is magnitude, but we've already proven that the reason countries don't want to go to war is deterrence, and we've proven that countries are unwilling to go to war, so that means these impacts of extinction don't even happen in the first place, so you don't even evaluate it, and we proved that we outweigh on probability because nuclear terrorism has worked for the last 70 years, and we have history on our side, and also they increase the chance of nuclear terrorism by putting them in less guarded facilities. So that just means you vote negative because we are maximizing well-being the best in the most moral way possible while they are increasing the chances of extinction happening and of billions of dead. So by saving 1 billion people, you ought to vote neg. For those reasons, you negate.
Alright, use my remaining 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Again. Alright, I'll just start. So the order is first I'll be addressing the big issues, mostly the weighing, and then I'll go down just the affirmative case and then the negative case. Right? Ready, Vratin? Alright. Now, begin time. In my opponent's last speech, they made a huge mistake. They conceded that if there is even a tiny chance of nuclear war happening, we must do everything we can to prevent it, which means if I can win there's even a chance of nuclear war happening, you are going to affirm. Back to my case, I've said that true repeat, foreign tensions like the ones between the US and North Korea and India and Pakistan are currently escalating, making nuclear war extremely likely, and the chance that a terrorist could steal a nuclear weapon from an unstable state like Pakistan is rising every single day. What this means is that there is a huge chance of nuclear war happening. Whatever arguments my opponent makes against this, he still can't 100% disprove that there's a chance of nuclear war. To repeat, nuclear war leads to extinction, and we must do everything we can to prevent this. As my opponent has conceded that nuclear war comes before all other impacts, and that even if there's a tiny chance that we still must do everything to prevent this, you are going to affirm. On the line by line on the affirmative, one on my first contention, my opponent says that we haven't had conflict, that leaders are rational, and that North Korea won't lead to nuclear weapons. Kim Jong-un is irrational. There's a high chance that he will use nuclear weapons on the U.S., shown by the fact that he is currently escalating conflicts. On India and Pakistan, he says that conventional war has declined generally, but can't disprove there's a high chance that India and Pakistan are currently escalating conflicts, and this will lead to full nuclear war. On my second contention, my opponent only has a couple arguments on this. One, he says I did not give an example of terrorists attacking military bases. I did. They infiltrated Pakistan military bases. And two, he says my card says that there's been a crackdown on security. There has been no such thing in my card. My opponent is blatantly lying when he says this. On to my opponent's case. On all of his arguments, once again, even if he wins all of this, he still can't 100% disprove that there's a chance of nuclear war happening. Meaning, even if he wins all of his arguments that nuclear deterrence is preventing conventional war and there's a chance of nuclear terrorism, even in the affirmative, you are still going to affirm to stop full nuclear war. On his first contention, once again, he says, just to extend some arguments, he conceded that nuclear weapons have not deterred conflicts as shown by Vietnam, Korea, Iran, and India, and Pakistan. And on his second contention, he's conceded that one full nuclear war is worse. Also, he says that his second contention turns the affirmative. It does not. What the affirmative primarily does in stopping nuclear terrorism is it prevents it from escalating into full nuclear war. And then, sure, nuclear terrorism might be possible in both worlds, but affirmative is the only one that prevents extinction because of this. In summary, you're going to affirm to stop the chance of nuclear war ever happening and killing everyone on Earth. Well, good debate.
Good debate.
The